Joined now by the political analyst, Professor Somadoda Fikeni. Professor Fikeni, good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us at what was really a difficult time. We've all known Jackson Mthembu in so many different ways for such a long time. How would you discuss, measure, define his contribution to South Africa?
Well, I do think that it is a life of commitment to the struggle right from the 80s that I remember into the 90s, and more significantly, he becomes more prominent for playing what I would say is an impossible role of being a spokesperson of the ANC during its tumultuous period. Because that in itself, I do think that one should measure the complexity and the awkwardness, as well as the fact that he still remained a person who could relate to different factions, who could relate to the media, different political parties, but also a very humble, straightforward, simple person committed to his cause. Once he made up his mind on anything, you knew that he would stick to that, he wouldn't vacillate, and he was a person who believed in his principles, and he believed that his organization could still be salvaged despite all the challenges that were there, and a loyal supporter of his organization.
He was also someone who wasn't afraid to speak his mind. I mean, I remember he was still, I think, Chief Whip at the time in 2017. He came out in public and criticized the leadership of his own party in scathing terms, and yet kept all of his positions.
Well, I do think that that was a Jackson Mthembu that you knew that within the confines of the National Executive Committee meeting, his colleagues would say he's known for speaking his mind, irrespective of whether that limited his career for being appointed. And again, he spoke against corruption, against factionalism, and he stuck to that particular position. So he was a very courageous person, and yet very humble, very simple person. You wouldn't think that he is holding some of these positions when you met him in person. And also a very committed community and a family member.
I mean, he's the kind of person who was also, just through, I suppose, his sheer honesty, you always knew where you were with Jackson Mthembu. You knew if he was going to come on TV or radio, you knew you were going to get an honest view. There was going to be no duplicity about it.
In fact, to me, I would say he represented a rare breed of spokespersons in an era of, people who do the spinning of everything, coining of every word to look good. He spoke, and you could see that he was connecting with what he believed in, whether that which he believed in had weaknesses or not, but that he was speaking from a position of honesty rather than trying to be a spin doctor, and him a lot of respect for those who were his political opponents and those who were his political allies.
In some ways, his sort of political career at a national level, I mean, being the spokesperson for the ANC during part of the era at least of then President Jacob Zuma, was not an easy job. You had a middle class who was largely hostile to the ANC at the time, to the Zuma ANC, let me put it like that. And he, again and again and again and again and again, minute by minute, had to represent the ANC to the middle classes.
Certainly, I do think that a fragmented organization as ANC has been, only people like Jackson Mthembu emerged, and they were not seen as deeply factional in a sense, because even when they were critical of their opponents, they were prepared to work with them. And it's for that reason that even opposition party leaders, he was accessible to them, and just a personable individual that was easy to pick up a conversation even if you met him in a social gathering. He didn't wear the sleeves of being a minister or being an ANC leader. He knew that first and foremost he had to be human.
Something he did so well was just being human in public. I mean, he would talk about his family, he would talk about things that were deeply personal in a way that most of us refuse to do.
Certainly, I do think that in him we've lost a leader. In him we've lost a person who has dedicated his youthful and adult life into the liberation struggle. And in him we have lost a person who was not perfect, but who was committed to a cause.
Professor Somadoda Fikeni, thank you for speaking to us under difficult circumstances. I really do appreciate it.